Okay, good afternoon, everyone. To a session about the brain, not blockchain and AI solely. I'm Dong-Seon Chang. You can call me Don. I'm a neuroscientist by training. I got my PhD at the Max Planck Institute for Biological Cybernetics. And right now, I'm investing. I'm a YouTuber, and I give lectures and advise companies about the brain and the technology the brain can use. Hi, Illia.
Hello. Great to have this conversation. I've presented before, but yeah, AI researcher turned crypto founder turned AI developer. So, been vivid user of this technology for a long time. Been very excited to build it, and I think very excited for this conversation.
Okay, before we deep dive, I wanted to find some common concept between AI, blockchain, and brain science. And I find the word token super interesting because we used to use the word token in brain science for a pretty long time, but in a different way how AI people use it. And you know that AI people and blockchain people use token in different senses, right? But I think in the future, all three concepts are kind of merging. So from a brain science perspective, token is kind of the minimum category you can categorize, minimum category to capture the physical information from the outside world. Let's say if you see a rainbow, you think it's 7 colors, but actually it's not 7 colors. It's continuously changing physical spectrums of light, which you capture into 7 different categories as you perceive the colors. So we call that dishes, the categories which capture it, tokens. And it's in a way similar because right now what we call token for the brain is kind of matching the tokens using AI, which is the basic units of processing information. And increasingly that I think will get a value probably on blockchain. Because if you think about the value, what is value, what the brain thinks is valuable, then actually it is something where your brain is comparing it with all kind of other stimulations and information and says this is valuable, right? At the current moment, we have something like money, maybe digital or not, and we perceive it as valuable. But at the end, if we go a few steps into the world of AI, maybe at the end, the last value left to us is which AI system you're using and how valuable your own system is, so you can get out the maximum value of it. So I think we're living in an interesting time.
Yeah, I mean that's an interesting comparison for sure. I think there's definitely a kind of disconnect between AI and crypto space, which I mean terminology is part of that, and at the same time, I mean we've seen this before actually, that in crypto the meme coins were a huge kind of huge thing, and what meme coins were actually were token of attention. Right, and they were talking like making that valuable, right? And it, in a way, it is very much like attention all you need, right? It's like at the end it's the same mechanism. It's like our brain activates on something that is like differentiated from the surrounding, and that leads to kind of stimuli and really. So yeah, I mean it's interesting to kind of think about how all of this concept like. There is a reason why we're calling them the same thing, but at the same time, they have a very different application, different aspects.
Yeah, I started a little bit with a puzzling topic. Let's go back into the real question, and maybe let me introduce you briefly about what I think AI will impact the brain. So I just came back a few weeks ago from a conference called South by Southwest, which is every year in Texas, Austin. And I met a few other researchers, one from UC Berkeley, who is studying AI's impact on students' learning, Christoph Koch, who is a chief scientific officer at the Paul Allen Institute and who studied human consciousness for more than 40 years. So with all these interesting other neuroscientists and researchers, the major topic we discussed about was actually, will humans become more stupid with more use of AI? Because there were a few studies, a few statistics coming out, and one of the studies showed that for the first time since we measured human intelligence with tests like IQ tests, that actually the teenager generation, like what we call Gen Z, Alpha generation, have shorter attention span, worse memory, worse compassion, empathy, worse empathy, and the memory was also shorter. That means in all tests, for years, actually, every generation turned out to be smarter than the generation before because of education, because of technology, new information. But now we are facing a new generation which turns out to be worse in all tests. That means, is it true? Right? Really, do we have the next generation becoming more stupid than the generation before? So that was one of the big discussions I had. And then the question is for sure, why? Why would that be? And we have a few candidates for that, which is watching too much shorts, not thinking. So we use a concept called cognitive muscle loss. It's like when you don't move your muscles, if you don't move your body, then you for sure have muscle loss. But similar things happen with your neuronal connections in your brain. If you use it, then it thrives, it builds new connections. If you stop using your brain, if you stop thinking critically, stop thinking creatively, then actually the connections decay. And what we see is actually the combination of human plus AI is improving more and more. We can do more things, we become more productive, and for sure we can achieve things we couldn't do anymore. But if you actually go into the detail and compare the human performance in it, that it seems like the human performance in human plus AI is actually shrinking and shrinking for the majority of people. It turns out that not everyone experienced that what we call brain atrophy, like loss of neuronal connections and the neuron mass. Actually, some people thrive, become more smarter, more productive, and if you do a test later with using AI, they become smarter people. So now the question we discuss all the time for the conference was, what protects people and why is that? And it turns out one professor from UC Berkeley had an answer on published data with 800 students. It seems those ones who have a protection from the brain functions decaying, they had one thing in common. They practiced something called mindfulness. And it was not only mindfulness meditation, it is actually if you are mindful in your life, really focusing on something, and you are actually using your agency, you are in control of your mind, of your body, then this decay of your brain functions is happening less. But actually, if you become passive, and just ChatGPT or any kind of a cloud giving you, do you want this? Should I do this for you? Do you want that? And you start just choosing it and you're not actively using AI, then actually you experience this cognitive muscle loss more and more. Then what makes you more like in danger of losing your brain functions? There were two factors she mentioned, and the first one was loneliness. And the second one was lack of purpose. That means if you are in your life having no purpose, you feel empty, you are kind of really wandering around, then the chances are you will have increased screen time, you use technology more passively, then actually the brain decay, the brain atrophy is happening stronger to you. And also if you are feeling lonely and you lose human connections, that is happening worse. So to summarize, it seems that really the more you use technology, you are in danger of losing the functions and your connections in your brain. It seems a real phenomenon. And some people are more in danger of experiencing this than others. And what distinguishes this is actually whether you are in control, you use your agency and you're mindful, or whether you're lonely and have a lack of purpose. So I found that really interesting to discuss about. And listening to this, what do you think? You're not lonely, you have a purpose, so probably you are better protected than others, Illia. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting kind of dimensionality, maybe kind of starting from beginning. If you ask right now people who grew up with calculators and computers to do math, they would be probably performing worse than the previous generation that didn't have access to calculators, that are like being trained to be engineers, for example, because we offloaded that function to the calculator. We, you know, for example, I judge for myself, right? Like, I definitely not a fast, you know, calculating like large numbers. I will use an instrument for that. But what distinguishes indeed kind of people who are better now at engineering is people who indeed ask the right questions. People who are trying to figure out what is the reason for this. And I think very much how you mentioned mindfulness, that is the fundamental question. And so with AI now, I usually say AI now is like magic. If you know the right spell, you can conjure reality. If you don't know the right spell, if you don't ask the right question, you'll get nothing, right? And similarly, how, you know, in some kind of like fiction, actually using somebody else's spell book will not help you. You need to develop it yourself. It's in a way very much an experience of you understanding what questions to ask and why you're asking these questions. And so for me, yeah, we were just discussing before, I have, you know, 10 plus agents running in parallel for coding. I have them, you know, I use this example, I have kind of a chief of staff like agent, I have a growth agent, I have kind of this whole system, and we, you know, actually making this into a product so we can actually offer this to everyone else. But a lot of it is about asking questions. And so a lot of it is I'm asking either questions to AI, why the AI done something, or I'm asking questions about my own kind of understanding, right? Where I say, hey, you know, like for example, I'm trying to build some automation for my own kind of operations in the company. And there's like a kind of standard way you can think of, you know, there's project management, there's tasks, etc. And I asked like, hey, is this the right way to think about it in the AI age, where you don't actually have the same type of jobs to be done anymore because AI will do a lot of them, and you don't need to track things like in the same way. What other options? What are the different things? And so it both helps kind of to think through these questions, and also allows me to kind of really be diving into like what is the reasoning behind it. Or, you know, we're doing development, I'm like, hey, given all of the, you know, for example, issues and features we have implemented in the past 2 weeks, what are the different types of things that we miss? What are different types that, like, what is where our thinking is missing when we're applying this? And so a lot of it is really about asking about the process and kind of trying to be like more and more meta, because AI is starting to do more and more of execution. And so, yeah, you don't need to actually be in that level. You really need to operate on a different level. And so that's why I kind of used math and calculators. Similar thing, right? It's like we're going on a different level where we're coordinating this kind of level of intelligence now that's ambient and present and can do effectively anything if you ask the right questions. And your job is really about creating these questions and coming up with them. That requires very different thinking to the point of atrophy. I think we may atrophy a lot of the execution muscle, where we're not going to be good at doing tests anymore because we're better at why are we doing this test? Is this test actually useful? Am I going to use this, what I learned in this test in my job day to day? No. Why would I do it? And so I think like there's actually, this tests themselves are starting to become less relevant. Same as, testing students right now, they can do, multiplication of like 3-digit numbers because they're never going to use it in practice.
I really like your metaphor about being a magician and having one own spell book, because it's right. We have to ask the right questions to get things done, right? And I totally agree with you that we don't memorize phone numbers anymore. We don't need to because we have smartphones. We don't need to memorize maps because we just can ask Google Map or use a navigation. So I think technology has always evolved to that direction. But I think with one difference, because all these tools until now were not really adaptive. I mean, maybe to a certain sense, they were more like static tools. That means once we have that, we can use them, then we can forget other things. The problem is, I think, the magic wand you're using with AI is adaptive. And not only adaptive, it actually it categorizes and it examines me too. It looks at me and says, okay, this guy's questions or this guy's prompts are actually elementary school level. I don't need to use many tokens, many GPUs. I can give him simple answers. So if once this magic wand decides like that, I'm caught in a feedback loop where I cannot really go into the advanced level because the system is actually categorizing me as less capable, so it doesn't give me the higher level answers once I'm in that loop. So here's the danger. If I really think this is AI and this is my skill, then someone who is in an advanced level of spellbook will use AI in a superhuman way, whereas someone who is caught in that level, like a mirror in a very elementary level, has the same tool but will not be that powerful. So in that way, I go back to you and say, okay, the exact questions or the spells you use become more and more important. And that is, I agree with you, the meta level. So it's okay, the executive level, AI and machines can do the work for us. It was always like that, it's okay. But the problem is, when do we use the ability to actually ask better questions? So I'm asking you back. So the questions you are asking, the prompts you are inputting, did they become better than the spells Illia used 10 years before? Do you think they became better, or maybe you were better 10 years ago?
I think they are better. I mean, to be clear, 10 years ago, we were putting them, well, I mean, for context, I worked on what was before transformers, so we were actually testing recurrent neural networks, but they were very dumb.
So the question is, how did you become better? How do you ask better questions? What do you think happened in your brain?
I think what happens is this realization that, I mean, for me, it was a big realization that the quality of the question really matters, and kind of being a lot more retrospective on what am I asking, like what am I doing, why am I doing. So I mean, very much mindfulness that you mentioned. I think in general that has been like for everything, for like being an executive and CEO, for being kind of a better person, understanding why this is happening. And it's hard. It's like sometimes.
And how do you get the answers? How do you know the quality improved? What are the evidence for that? Where do you get them?
I think it's coming from, can I do the same things faster? Can I get better results? Can people see that I'm making better decisions, right? And then we have like company and products, etc. Are they finding the fit better? I think it's always going to be also internal, right? At the end, a lot of this is how you perceive it. But I think like the core question is really kind of, if you understand the assumptions that go. So like maybe very practically, LLMs have general, like these models have a very like averaged out assumption base, right? And so because of this, if you don't shift them from that average, you get the average answer. And that's kind of a general, like, I mean, there was an article actually, I think yesterday or 2 days ago, which was like, hey, if you ask it for business advice, it will give you the most general answer possible, right? And so if you're like CEO and ask you for business advice or a startup or a founder, like it gives you a general answer, which is kind of useless, right? It's like, be collaborative, innovative, etc. And so you need to be very kind of proactive on shifting this toward the assumptions that you're making, and also being very clear. So for that, you need to be very clear what assumptions you're making, right? It's like, I assume this is true and this is true, right? I use this example as like, for example, you are a growth engineer that is trying to grow revenue of this company. We assume that, these types of things are going to be true when you're applying this. Now, formulate hypotheses from this assumption, and then let's test them, right? And then maybe this will lead to invalidating the underlying assumptions. And so you need to reflect on that as well, right? So, and when I use the systems, actually, I spend most of the time reading. I literally, because it outputs a lot, it actually effectively writes a lot, which you need to analyze and read and really think through, okay, like, what assumptions made, what was the outcome, did it really kind of thought deeply about it? And these models have very poor judgment as well, and so you really need to apply judgment on top, which is, again, it's all about assumptions and kind of understanding this trade-off space, which is in your head and kind of in your combination of the experiences you've had. And so I think like that is the kind of mechanism to continue really like engaging your brain and really exercising it. And it's very different from, when I was an engineer, the type of work I would do was very different, right? It was very much working from one problem down and very kind of, I would say like vertically down, versus now it's very horizontal, very meta level. I'm doing 20 things in parallel, and I'm trying to think through the system that's going to do it better. I'm trying to think of the assumptions that I'm making when I'm doing this, and so that I think is again, my position here is, as people are starting to do more and more of that, and in general as society becomes honestly more automated on the execution, we all kind of become kind of operating on that meta level, and we will need to figure out ways to measure that, your AIQ.
So interesting. So if I rephrase your answer, I would probably rephrase it like this. So first, you continue question the question in order to really test the assumptions and fine-tune what you really wanted to get out. So you dig deeper into the question. You're not starting from the answer, whatever it gives. You actually dig deeper into the question. That's one thing, to get better questions. And then, in a way, how do you validate it, whether you have better questions? You mentioned product and services, and now you're horizontally more connected. And I think that's one way we get better answers. It's like no genius scientist can actually produce world-changing ideas in one shot. That's why we have peer review, why we have other scientists in conferences giving each other feedbacks. Because I think this peer review, there's other humans giving us feedbacks in terms of products, services, or at conferences. That kind of horizontal feedback from others makes my questions better in a way. But at the same time, I also have to deepen my domain knowledge, the things I know and I can judge better than the average, and have to fine-tune it. So in a way, I think in terms of informatics or computer science, I cannot even imitate the questions you ask. But on the other hand, in terms of neuroscience or brain science questions, although we use the same AI, probably I can make the AI use more tokens. So in this way, like going to the limit of how deep I can go just internally, plus extending the boundaries externally, I think these two processes together make our questions better. And I think that brings it back to the initial question I asked, why do some people's brain become worse and why do some people's brain become better in the process of using AI? And I think together in our discussion, one kind of hypothesis would be if we are vertically and horizontally try to extend our boundaries and pushing it, we actually extend the abilities of our brain and we don't have decay. Whereas when we just are fine with the average given answer and think that's the world, and actually our boundaries become smaller and smaller, and actually the way we can compute, think, or ask, the limits are like coming very soon. So probably, would you agree to that summary?
Yeah, very much. I think, as you said, if you don't ask, if you don't try to push the boundary, you get this average answers and they kind of mean everyone into one place. And I think where you started, right, which is, do you have purpose? That is, the purpose is what drives you to try to push the boundaries. And so if you don't have something that would be driving you one way or another, then yeah, you're kind of naturally okay with like an average answer, which indeed doesn't require more mental ability.
Another question which is interesting is we talked about the cognitive outsourcing and cognitive muscle loss. But interestingly, the most used case where people use AI is actually not even cognitive anymore. Most of people use it for emotional outsourcing. So if you talk with parents, a lot of the parents are asking, my child is doing this and this and this. ChatGPT, Claude, what should I do? Or you have like problems between husband and wife or romantic relationship. Oh, my partner is giving me a headache. What should I do, ChatGPT? So a lot of people started actually outsourcing their emotional problems to solve it for AI. That's one thing. Even worse, that's the last TED Talk I saw and shocked me. 72% of US teenagers have their first romantic relationship not with humans anymore. They have it with AI. Because they start talking with AI, they have their conversation partner with AI agents, and suddenly they're in the age to feel romantic emotions, and that romantic emotions are not directed towards human for the first time, but towards AI agents. And when I read about this, I was shocked. I don't hope this goes global. I hope this stays local, but my worries are actually it will become.
Well, given how many like AI boyfriend girlfriend companies out there, I'm pretty sure it's it's already global phenomenon.
And so let me ask you something, a question which probably crosses the lines. How is your relationship with Erica? Is it always like peaceful, romantic, nice, or sometimes you go between hell and heaven?
Well, we have two tiny babies.
Even with babies, you have both hell and heaven moments, isn't it? Let's omit it.
I mean, it's it's waves, but yeah.
Yeah, and that's the point I wanted to make, because we think about the human brain, our abilities, emotional abilities, but let's admit it, human relationships are not always nice. No romantic relationship is always beautiful. We go between heaven and hell. That's used to be always like that, and I don't believe in any couple when they say they had always 100% heaven. Impossible, right? So that means human relationship is by definition very dirty, very noisy, has all kind of problems. And as a brain scientist, if you ask me, why do we have our big brains? Why did our brains evolve? The reason number one is actually that we needed to solve other people's problems. That's why our brains became so big. We have social brains. That means it's actually a worse problem when we use AI to outsource our human relationship problems, because they're so uncomfortable, gives us pain, and we don't prefer it anymore. We go for the more comfortable version, having a perfect AI agent, voice, body, whatever, a setup for me. I think in the near future, we will even have some kind of bodies perfectly adjusted to our tastes where we just don't want to see humans anymore because they're too ugly, right? So if we imagine that kind of future, that is actually the worst outcome, emotionally more than cognitive. So in that sense, I think it's super important that although we become better humans with our skills using AI and asking questions, there is another dimension where we have to protect our human relationships, however hard and painful they are, and continue this. And we need more mechanisms focusing on that. That's actually, as a brain scientist, my main message. Because now we're thinking about all kind of problems AI can solve. But I think, please, AI, don't solve our romantic problems. Please don't solve our human connections, because that's, for me, the real dystopia when we use the abilities, when we lose the ability to understand other human minds. I think it's the end for humans. And I think this is the same message what Geoffrey Hinton, the father of deep learning, said. There will be no Terminator, there will be no AI like coming and physically punishing us. I think the much easier answer is they do psychological gaslighting and let us give up all our abilities ourselves. So in that sense, I think the emotional outsourcing is something we have to really see carefully.
So maybe on this note, the interesting question to you, which is, as this AI evolving, like human brain is actually layers of kind of evolutionary stack, right? We have like reptile brain, we have kind of lots of different components, and we have neurocortex, which kind of added a lot of this like higher order thinking and emotional relationship. And there's a thesis that they're going to be in cyber cortex, right? Something that we can, add on top of our brain, which allows us to effectively fuse directly.
What Elon Musk wants.
with machine. And so the question, and this is kind of within the same realm of, well, if we're already outsourcing everything, like what if that's just part of us? And we can actually, you can have telepathy, right, where you're just offloading parts of your contacts directly to somebody else. You can, do a lot more things kind of with this ability. And this also, because there's a flip side, which is like AI itself becomes more and more intelligent, maybe like becomes self-aware, maybe not, but effectively like its intelligence is, if we look at singularity, it becomes unattainable for a human. And so this is actually a way for human species to continue evolving in lockstep with this technology versus being left in the dust by, super intelligence. And this would also, again, but the question here is like, this is the same question. If you replace every part of the ship, is it still a ship? If you add this, AI cortex on top of our brain, is it still you? If you're able to like do telepathy with others through this, if you are able to offload, some of the harder problems of emotional relationship to this system, like, is it still you? How are you thinking about that?
Very evil question. Very evil and very interesting, but I was expecting this question to come. I can give you a technical answer and a philosophical answer. So the technical answer is this. So in order to really have this kind of system for Neuralink or any kind of BCI system, it needs to solve two problems, input and output both. Output means what we think, what we feel, can the system read it out? And we can do, for sure. Neuralink has shown, all kind of other systems can do. Whatever I think, the machines can read it, move robot arms or play games. We can do that. To that level we came. But it's actually not really what we want, isn't it? If I want to speak French, if I want to speak Arabic, I want like Matrix, sleep, please input that information. Next morning I wake up, I can drive a helicopter, I can speak Arabic and French. That's what I want, right? So input into my brain from AI. And if that is accomplished, I agree that kind of machine could evolve us. But technically, this has never been successful. Not even at a level of a cell, like inputting information from the digital side directly into the brain has not been possible. So the only option we have is kind of having a separate chip, having a kind of a separate kind of a side brain in a digital form, which we can use like an outsourced database. And for that, I don't think we directly need to couple our brains to that. I think for that, we will have more advanced systems like gloves, bodies, or smart glasses, or smart lenses, which makes it more comfortable. So that would be my position as a technical answer. The philosophical answer is, who are we? What is defining myself? Is it my body? Is it my skin? And actually, from a brain scientist perspective, actually from Institute for Biological Cybernetics, my answer would be, we are not, the minimum unit of human is not I, it is we. We exist together as humanity, we exist together as those born in the same time, in the same culture, in the same space, and only with the connections from brain to brain together, that is our ability. Because if you actually take just the individual brain, we still have the same hardware, same DNA, same brain size as 100,000 years ago. All the skills we have, all the knowledge we have is not coming as an individual from a genetic level to us. It is based on the human society, culture, structures we have built to educate ourselves. And that's us. So in that sense, adding a certain kind of component, however perfect it may be, to the individual brain level would not advance us to the next beings. That means if we really want to compete with AI, or our only chance is actually to think about how do we connect human to human more efficiently, nicely, without wars, without conflicts, without all kind of blood and pain. We have to think about social systems which enables better education, better connections. And in this sense, as a collective intelligence, we have a chance against AI. But if you think in terms of individual I, we already lost the game. That's my message.
It's a good message. No wars. Hashtag. All right. Well, we're out of
Okay.
time. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Very exciting.
Yeah.
And hope you guys learned.
Hope we all get happy and healthy. All you. Thank you.